Their feathers. They can absorb up to 7.4% of their body weight in water. What I've got here are two chickens, a traditional free-range chicken and its rather paler, mass-produced cousin next door. When you look at this one here, first of all, you can see that it actually does have that sort of healthy look about it. It's sort of pinky purple. It looks as if it's sort of been out in the country air. And if you want to tell whether you've got a good chicken, then there's a little strip of fat under the skin, both sides here. It's creamy white, and that always indicates a good quality. Now, the best news I've got to tell you is that after all these years of cooking chickens, I have cracked the very best way to roast a chicken that I've ever tried, and I'm going to share it with you now. First of all, I'm going to put a little bit of stuffing into the cavity of the chicken, and what I've got here is ½ an ounce of butter mixed with 2 tablespoons of this, which is tarragon leaves, which have been chopped, and tarragon has a wonderful affinity with chicken. And there are 2 cloves of garlic in there, and they've just been mixed like that. I'm just going to pop that inside the body cavity of the chicken, and that'll melt while it's roasting. And here I've got some lemon. It's ½ a lemon, and it's been cut in slices, and then the slices have been cut into halves, and they're just going to be packed away in there with the chicken as well. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I've got butter inside, but I'm going to put a little bit of olive oil around the skin. Maybe a dessert spoonful altogether. You just want enough to moisten the skin, because that's what's going to make it lovely and crispy when it's in the oven. And then it needs to have some freshly milled pepper and salt. And the secret of this chicken is that it's fast roasted on the highest temperature in the oven. I've been doing that a lot lately, cooking things really fast and discovering lots of new ways of cooking. And the temperature is 450 degrees, highest setting on most ovens. And you roast it for just 45 minutes. But it shouldn't go straight from the fridge into the oven. Take it out about an hour before you're going to cook it. Now, if it's a very hot day and you don't want to do that, then you must allow an extra 5 minutes cooking time. And just to emphasise that this method is not for the large family roast chicken, which we'll be looking at in a minute, but for what I call the midweek smaller chicken weighing 3 pounds. And there we have it, our beautiful roast chicken. And now I want to show you how to tell if a chicken is cooked or not. And the way to do it, if you've got a very large chicken, you go in here at the thickest part of the thigh and see if the juices run clear. But this is quite a small chicken, so we're going to go here where the thigh touches the body. And what you need to look for is, do the juices run clear? And there we have it. Inside you can see all that lovely chicken juice running completely clear, no trace of blood left in it. What's going to happen now is, because all the juices bubble up to the surface of the chicken, it needs to rest to allow them to seep back into the flesh. So we'll give it 20 minutes covered with foil. Well, now I want to show you how to make a sauce to go with the chicken. I can't believe this is so good and at the same time so simple. And what happens is, you remember the garlic butter that went inside the cavity of the chicken? Well, that was scraped into this bowl here. And then when the chicken is transferred to its serving dish, you place the tin over direct heat, and all the sort of juices and crusty debris bits in the bottom are scraped into the juices from the bowl. And then the next thing you do, as soon as it's hot, you tip the juices to the corner of the pan, and what you can see then is a little layer of fat on the top, and you don't want the fat, so you just skim that off using a tablespoon, with just resting the tablespoon on the top like that, and you'll find the fat will just ease its way into the tablespoon, and you're left with the juices and a little bit of fat. You need a little bit. Then turn the heat right up. And what's going to join all those lovely juices is, first of all, the juice of ½ a lemon. This is a lemon and tarragon sauce. So that goes in next. And then I've got ½ a pint of dry white wine. So the dry white wine is going to go in. And that all looks pretty watery at the moment, but what we're going to do now is with the heat turned up, wait for it to come up to simmering point, and then leave it on a high heat. And what happens is it will bubble and bubble, and all the steam will evaporate, and the sauce will reduce down to half its original volume. And you can sort of watch that happening before your eyes, and then when it's reduced, it'll be nice and syrupy and ready to serve with the chicken. So we're just going to wait now for our sauce. I think I'll just put a little bit of pepper and salt in it, and we'll taste it at the end. And then what we'll do now is just wait for that to reduce to half its volume so you can see the consistency. And you can see how that's reduced down now by the little tide mark that goes around the tin. You can see how far that's gone down. And I'm going to add just a teaspoon of fresh chopped tarragon leaves to add to the flavour. And what you need to know is after 20 minutes resting, the chicken, all the juices are going back into the chicken, but it's not getting cold. It holds its heat perfectly well. And what I'm going to do now is just cut a little piece off and then just turn it round, because what I want you to see is I want you to see how juicy the breast of the chicken is, because that's the test of a chicken, is if the breast is juicy and not dry. So let's have a look at that now. There we are. And if I press my knife in like that, you can see that's still lovely and moist and lovely and juicy on the breast there.
What I would like to see is a revival of the traditional family roast chicken. I like to serve it with a stuffing. You need a large bird, about 5 pounds in weight, and here I've got sausage meat, fresh sage leaves, onion, a dessert apple, some chopped parsley, a little bit of mace, the chicken livers from the giblets, and fresh breadcrumbs. And the rest of the giblets are simmered for 2 hours to make a delicious giblet stock. Stuff the chicken in the body and neck cavities, then seal with a skewer and protect the breast with a layer of butter. Season, then lay on rashers of smoked streaky bacon and cook the chicken for 20 minutes to the pound plus an extra 20. But you must baste the chicken 3 times as the bird is cooking, because this keeps all the flavour in. Half an hour before the end of the cooking, remove the now crispy bacon, keep it warm and baste once again, turning the heat up to really crisp the skin. This is a very easy sauce made with cranberry jelly and sage. All you do is whisk them together, adding some balsamic vinegar. All it needs now then is some gravy made with the giblet stock, something green and leafy, some crunchy roast potatoes, and some friends or loved ones to share the feast.
Since I've been preparing recipes, it's amazing how you get to know what are the popular ones. And 2 of the most popular ones I've ever done are called chicken basque and Moroccan chicken, because they're cooked with rice and other vegetables. It's very easy to serve because everything is cooked in the same dish. So what we're going to do today is try and do another version of that by me showing you how to do a Spanish paella. And what you start off with is a chicken jointed into 8, and you put 2 tablespoons of olive oil in the pan and brown the chicken. Now you brown it 4 pieces at a time, don't crowd the pan, it's the same as doing meat. And what I've got here is the last piece just coming out of the pan, so there it is, lovely and golden. When a recipe says brown a chicken, make sure it's really nice and golden like that. So that's removed to a plate. Now I've got 1 very large Spanish onion, that's going to go into the pan. And that's just been roughly chopped, not too small, not too large. And to join that, I've got a red pepper that's been deseeded and chopped again into rough chunks. And then the next ingredient is a very Spanish ingredient, chorizo sausage, and when you're buying chorizo, make sure it's one that's made in Spain. We don't make it very well in England, so get a really genuine one. And I've got 6 ounces, and it's been chopped into quite small pieces. I don't think you need the pieces too large. I'm beginning to get some nice colour now. Turn the heat down to medium and just cook those for about 6 to 8 minutes. What we want to end up with is onion and peppers and chorizo that are nice and golden and brown at the edges. Once you've got everything sort of softened and browned at the edges, the next thing you need to do is add some garlic, and I've got 2 cloves of garlic here, so that's going to go in next. And the garlic's been crushed. Stir the garlic in, give it a few seconds cooking, and then we're going to have lovely spices. First of all, we're going to have saffron, and I'm just going to sprinkle it in. I'm not crushing it. Then also in my little pot here, I've got 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper and a teaspoon of Spanish paprika. And that's going to give it a lovely peppery flavour. And the saffron is going to give it wonderful colour. Now what I'm going to do is put my chicken joints back in. And in Spain, they would have a beautiful, strong, concentrated chicken stock or prawn stock. But I'm going to cheat. What I'm going to do is put the chicken in now, and then I'm going to put tomatoes in. And these tomatoes have been skinned and chopped, and I've got 8 ounces here. And I'm going to pour in 2 pints of hot water. This has been freshly boiled from the kettle. That goes in next. So what I'm doing, in order to make it easier for me and easier for you, is making my stock in the same pan. So what I'm going to do now is let that come up to simmering point, and I'm going to give it 10 minutes simmering. And while I'm waiting for that to come up to simmering point, I'm going to give it a good seasoning of salt, a little bit of freshly milled pepper, but not too much because we have got the paprika and the cayenne in there. After 10 minutes, you remove the pieces of chicken from the pan, and now we've got some nice chicken flavoured stock. The next thing I'm going to add is rice, and this is the genuine thing. This is Spanish rice. It's specially grown to make paella, and it comes from Spain in rather attractive little white bags like this that look very good. So it's called Cauliflower rice, and I've got 12 ounces here. And then give it a stir, but it's a good idea to leave the rice near the centre of the pan because then it cooks more evenly. Bring that back up to simmering point and let the rice have 10 minutes simmering before the chicken and the rest of the ingredients go back in. And while we're waiting for that, I want to tell you that I have got this rather nice pan that looks like a paella pan here, but you can make it with a wide shallow casserole or a nice big, quite deep sauté pan. Then after 10 minutes, you put the chicken pieces back in to join the rice, and then we're going to have 2 more ingredients. The first one are these, which are tiger prawns, and I've got 12 here, and I've left 4 as a garnish with the heads on because it looks pretty and traditionally Spanish. The others have had the heads removed. So they're going to be tucked in amongst the chicken. I'll just put these handsome fellas on the top here, like that. They will actually need turning over halfway through. And then the final ingredient, wonderful ingredient, 2 ounces of fresh shelled peas. And I must say, I'm a person for seasons, but I do think it's lovely now being able to buy fresh shelled peas in the winter. And I'm just going to just press those down a little bit into the juice. It's 10 to 15 minutes cooking now, and the way to tell when the paella is cooked is, of course, the prawns are going to turn a lovely pink colour, but also when the rice is cooked. You need to dig out a bit of rice, taste it. As soon as the rice is tender, then the paella is ready. And whilst you're cooking, the last 10 minutes cooking is going on, give the pan a shake like that, just once or twice, and make sure the rice is well into the liquid. The reason for that is that paella originally was made outside, well, it still is in Spain, made outside on fires. And the area of the heat was wide. Well, when you're making it at home, the area of heat is not as wide as the pan, so that's why you need to do a little bit of shaking at the end. Now, today the rice has taken 20 minutes to cook completely. Then you turn the heat out, take the pan off the heat, cover it with a cloth, because the cloth can absorb some of the moisture that's still left in it, and leave it like that for 5 minutes. And after 5 minutes, your paella is ready to be revealed to the world. And I've got a Spanish friend called Eduardo, and he says in Spain they sometimes serve their paella with little bits of lemon to squeeze over. So you serve it onto the plate, and then you squeeze the bits of lemon over the top. And all I can say about that is, after you've done your preparation, you've got 40 minutes cooking time, that's all, and you have a beautiful meal for 6, complete. You don't have to serve anything else. All you need to go with that is some nice rioja. This is a Thai-inspired chicken dish, and it's so quick and easy that you won't believe how good it tastes. The chicken pieces are marinated in lime juice and zest, and then fried, stir-fried on a very high heat until nice and crisp and golden. Then you add a de-seeded green chilli, stir-fry for 1 minute before adding 5 fluid ounces of coconut milk and some Thai fish sauce. Then you add some shredded spring onions, including the green parts, and some fresh coriander, and you let the whole thing cook for about 2 minutes. Serve it with Thai fragrant rice and garnish with some more shredded spring onions and chopped coriander leaves. Well, we've looked at roast chicken, and there's only one thing that's as good as roast chicken, and perhaps even a little bit better, and that's a roast duck with crisp, crunchy skin and lovely, moist flesh underneath. And so, after all my years of cooking, I think I finally cracked how to do that, and I'm delighted to be able to tell you. But first of all, I want to talk about the type of duck. Now, there are ducks available. One's called Aylesbury, the other's called Barbary. This one here is called Gressingham. And this is a cross between a Chinese Peking duck and a wild mallard. And what that means is, although it only weighs 4 pounds, it's actually got a lot of meaty flesh and a very lovely sort of slightly gamey flavour. But the other ducks are good too. All duck is good. But if you can get this one, this is called Gressingham duck, then I think that's the best one to get. And it's actually terribly, terribly easy to cook. All you do is, first of all, a duck is a very fatty bird, and when you're cooking, the secret is to get the fat out of it. And how to do that is you look at the fatty parts of the duck and you just prick those little parts with a skewer. Don't go right down into the flesh, because otherwise you'll lose the juice, but just make a few little pricks on the surface, and that'll make little channels for the fat to come out whilst it's being cooked. I hope you can notice on the duck skin here how dry it is. It's really dry, and if you want to have crispy skin, the secret is getting it dry before it goes into the oven. So when you get the duck home, what you need to do is take off the cling film, dry it very, very thoroughly, put it on a plate and just leave it in the fridge so that the skin can dry out as much as possible. Overnight is best. And then finally, the most fat is trapped in the thighs here. So what you need to do is pull them out as far as you can using your thumbs, and then just really do some extra pricks right down there where the thigh meets the body. Then another thing I'd like to tell you about cooking a duck is it's quite good if you've got one of these. And this is a very simple little roasting rack. And if you put the duck on that, what happens is it means you can get all the hot air from the oven circulating round to get the nice crispy skin. And then I'm going to season it with pepper and coarse salt. So I've got some salt here and I'm just going to sprinkle it on. You need to have some salt all over the surface, rather like doing a jacket potato, because it helps to give you a crispy skin. Now, I'm into fast roasting, as you've gathered, and so we're preheating the oven exactly the same as before when we did the chicken. This is 450 degrees, very hot. Put the duck on the centre shelf and then leave it to cook for just 1 hour and 40 minutes. Now, you don't need to do anything else, but a couple of times during the cooking, you'll need to take out the roasting tin and drain off the fat. There's a lot of fat that comes out of the duck. But first, I have to give you what is the most important part of this recipe. It's very nostalgic for me because it's the first thing I ever cooked when I worked in a restaurant, was roast duck with cherry sauce, and it's always been a favourite of mine. And now I want to show you how to make the very best cherry sauce ever. And these are dried sour cherries. They are actually Morello cherries, but they're called sour cherries when you buy them in little packs. I've got 3 ounces, and you soak them overnight in 8 fluid ounces of red wine. If you forget to soak them overnight, you can get away with 4 hours, but overnight is best. And then what you do is you pop the soaked cherries into a saucepan and you put 1 ounce of sugar in with them and 1 tablespoon of really good quality red wine vinegar. And then you bring them up to simmering point and you let them cook very, very slowly on top of the heat until it's reduced down to a lovely sauce. So here we go. Here's our wonderful roast duck, and I have tried recipe after recipe after recipe over the years for roast duck. I've tried the Chinese way, I've tried boiling it first, I've done everything, and this is the first time now I've managed to crack cooking a duck, getting a very crisp, as you can see there, lovely crisp, crunchy skin, and yet still having some lovely succulent meat underneath. So I'm very pleased with that one. And you're not going to believe this, there is still some fat in the tin here, but this is what came out of the duck while it was cooking. But it'll keep in the fridge for about 2 or 3 months, and you can use it to make the most wonderful crunchy roast potatoes. Now, this duck has been carved to serve 4 people, and as you can see, we've seen the crispy bit, but now you can see the lovely sort of succulent flesh underneath as well. And I have written down instructions for you as to how to carve the duck so neatly like this. And now all it's going to need is the delicious cherry sauce. And there it is. One of my most favourite recipes in the whole world, duck with sour cherry sauce.
This one is called chicken cacciatora, which means the hunter's chicken, and you start by browning some onions, adding garlic and some rosemary leaves that have been bruised and crushed with a pestle and mortar. Then the key ingredient is 1.5 pounds of well-flavoured ripe red tomatoes, and these have to be skinned and chopped. Add the tomatoes to the onions, along with some dry white wine and some wine vinegar. Pop in a bay leaf and some tomato puree, stir and bring this all back to simmering point. Then simmer for 20 minutes until it's reduced by about half. After that, add a chicken which has been jointed and well browned, and then give it another 40 minutes cooking. This is good served with vegetables or with pasta. I've just got time to show you 2 more ideas. Inside these little parcels made from vine leaves are quails, lovely little self-contained birds that cook up really nice and juicy. These are covered in pancetta, which gives a lovely flavour, and I like to serve this with a confit of grapes. These are grilled chicken kebabs with lemon that have been marinated with garlic, oregano, lemon juice and oil.
They're served with the syrup of the marinade, which is combined with the cooking juices, and a gremolata topping of garlic, lemon zest and parsley. And inside this carefully sealed pot is a lovely bird. This is guinea fowl, and it's sealed in with rosemary, white wine and, believe it or not, 30 cloves of garlic. But after 1.5 hours cooking time, the garlic mellows and becomes very fragrant. This time we're going to look at how to cook vegetables. We're going to cook root vegetables very, very slowly and see how to make a Tunisian aubergine salad and look at something different to do with courgettes. Now, vegetable cookery is an enormous subject and we won't be able to get through all of it, but I want to try and explain some of the principles. We have an unfortunate reputation in Britain abroad that we don't know how to cook vegetables, we always overcook them. And I always remember Victoria Wood in one of her splendid monologues at the Albert Hall talking about her auntie who always put the Brussels sprouts on in November for the Christmas lunch. And everybody laughed because we all knew what she meant about overcooked, soggy vegetables. But then we now have another problem. We have the sort of snobby end of cooking vegetables that hardly cooks them at all and serves them raw, and that isn't good either. So what I hope to try and be able to share with you today is how to catch the moment when a vegetable is just cooked but not raw and not overcooked. Now, because it's winter, I want to start off with a recipe for roasting winter vegetables. And sometimes at this time of the year it's easy to think, oh, there aren't many vegetables around, but all these lovely roots that have been stored for the winter are still plentiful. And I'm going to show you a mixture of root vegetables that will be roasted. First one is this ugly creature here. This is celeriac, sometimes called celery root, and why it's sometimes called that is because it tastes of celery. It has the sort of texture of a swede or a turnip, but it has this lovely celery flavour, and although it looks ugly, once it's peeled and cut into chunks, then it's going to be really, really delicious. So that's number one. Number two is our friend the Swede, and the Swede sometimes, you know, is blighted as being a bit boring, but when you roast it and it goes sort of lovely and toasted at the edges, it does have a brilliant flavour. Here we've got shallots, and this one is a sweet potato. Now, you might not have used this before. It is a vegetable that has got a sort of potatoey texture, but with a bit of sweetness. But if you find you don't like the sweetness, you can replace this in the recipe by using parsnips, which are also sweet in a different way. The other one here is squash. This is butternut squash, and it's a member of the pumpkin family. And I think I'd better start by sort of explaining to you how to prepare this, because you might not have used it before. It has a lovely, very mealy, chunky texture, and when it's roasted, has lovely flavour too. And the way to deal with this one here is to just take a sharp knife and cut it at the place where it changes shape. And then the next thing you need to do is cut it into chunks like this. And then when you've got it cut into chunks, you can then begin to take the peel off. And this is going to need a sharp knife to take the peel off. But the other vegetables, it's very important when you're peeling vegetables with thin skins, not the thick-skinned ones like this, but the thin ones like this, to use a proper vegetable peeler. If you're using a sharp knife, it's very easy to take too much off. And most of the flavour is actually near the skin. So if you use one of these, and I'm just going to show you how simple it is, it just slides along, and now you can see the lovely colour of the sweet potato. And what's coming off here is just the very thin outer skin and not any of the precious flesh underneath. So I think this is quite an important bit of equipment. Now, when you've prepared your vegetables, they look like this. Nice, sort of very chunky pieces. And we're going to roast them all together in a roasting tray. But first, they're going to need some olive oil. And I've got 3 tablespoons of olive oil here. So that's going to go onto the vegetables. And oven roasting is a lovely way to prepare vegetables because it leaves you free to go away and do other things, and then they're all ready cooked together. The next thing I'm going to do is add some salt and pepper. And then we're going to add some flavouring. First of all, 2 cloves of garlic. And the garlic is crushed, and now on an earlier programme we prepared garlic with a pestle and mortar, but this time I'm going to use a garlic crusher. I've put my 2 cloves in. What I'm now going to do is squeeze very hard, and you'll see the garlic coming out like that. But this garlic crusher has this here, so that when you've crushed it, you can slide it over that way, like that, and take all the other bits out that were trapped. And the very good news about this is, for those who have dishwashers, it goes in the dishwasher, so that's okay. Now we've got some herbs here, some mixed herbs. I've got rosemary and thyme here. It's about a tablespoon altogether. And I'm just going to sprinkle those in. And then when I've done that, the best way to sort of get this going is to use your hands and just make sure all the vegetables have got a little bit of garlic and a little bit of herb on them. And it might not be so good nutritionally, but if you wanted to, if you're busy, you're leading a busy life and you've got to work and come home and cook supper for, well, this will serve 6 people, you can actually prepare this up to 2 days in advance. What I do is just put it in a plastic carrier bag, put it in the lowest part of the refrigerator, and then when you come home from work, whoosh, onto the baking sheet, and it's all ready to cook without any preparation. Now, let me just talk to you about the baking sheet. It's a good, solid baking sheet because it's going to go in at a high temperature, 425 degrees, and the vegetables will take about 30 to 40 minutes to roast, and what we want to achieve is they've got to be tender, catch the moment, just cooked, not overcooked, not undercooked, and also the other thing you want it to have is them nice and sort of toasted at the edges. And there we are. The way to tell if they're cooked is to use a skewer like that, yes, and you can see they're nice and sort of crusty and caramelised at the edges. And although I've used this particular combination of vegetables, you can use any other combination you want to. It doesn't matter, just use the same quantities and there you go.
Something magical happens to vegetables when you cook them very slowly. This is a simple winter soup, and the vegetables I'm going to use are carrots, celeriac, swede, onion and leek. You prepare the leeks by cutting vertically down in half to about halfway, and then you fan the slices of leek under the cold running tap to get rid of any dirt or grit. Then place all the chopped vegetables in a large cooking pot, season and cover with 2½ pints of vegetable stock, then bring it up to simmering point, put it in a low oven and leave it there for 3 hours before liquidizing and serving with chopped chives.
Now I want to talk about the virtues of steaming and boiling, and we're going to begin with steaming vegetables. And I thought perhaps it might be quite a good idea to just have a look at some steamers. This one here is the old-fashioned type of steamer where you have a steaming compartment that goes on top of the water and then the lid goes on, and that's quite good for doing puddings, Christmas puddings. Then we've got the Oriental steamer, which is made of bamboo, and that's quite good, but they come in different sizes, big sizes, small sizes, but you need to sort of fit that onto the right size of pan, obviously. That's the only disadvantage to that one. This one I tend to use the most. This is called a fan steamer, and it closes up into a little fan like that, so you can keep it in your cupboard. It doesn't take a lot of cupboard space, and then you can open it out according to the size of your saucepan, that big, or that big. And so we're going to start now with a recipe for cauliflower, a wonderful vegetable, beautiful vegetable, and probably one of the nicest English traditions is to have cauliflower with cheese sauce, and I'm going to show you a quick version of that. And I do find that soggy cauliflower that turns a bit grey is not very nice, so I find steaming is better than boiling for cauliflower. But first of all, you need to get your cauliflower. It's got to be sort of creamy yellow, not too white in the curds here. These are called the curds. And then the leaves, I don't know if you can hear that, the leaves should be nice and squeaky. And that means it's nice and fresh and not limp or too yellow looking. Now you take off the outer leaves of the cauliflower, and I find it's better not to cook it whole. It's better to cook it separated out into what's called florets. So first of all, take the tough outer leaves. You don't actually need those at all in the cooking. And then take off the stalk end. Take a sharp knife and go right the way through, quite close, like that. And then the next little layer of leaves come off. And these, actually, I'm going to cook with the cauliflower because I think they have quite a bit of flavour. And I actually quite like eating them as well. So I'm going to keep those. And then I'm going to separate it into florets. And the way to do that is to find a sort of stalky bit. Now the core here is, I haven't cut it down low enough, so I'm going to cut a little bit more off so I've got more vision. So that can come off next. And then go in with your knife to a stalk, like that, and you'll soon see the stalk. Cut through it, and then just break off the florets. And they'll come, I'll take another one off for you to see now. Quite easily, like that. It's quite good fun actually separating them out. Now, put your fan steamer into a pan like this, then put the cauliflower florets in the steamer. And cauliflower has a great affinity with two flavourings. One is bay leaf. So I've got 2 bay leaves and I've cut them in half and sort of sprinkled them in amongst the cauliflower. And the other is nutmeg. Very traditional English spice, nutmeg, and I'm going to put a little bit of nutmeg on the top of the cauliflower. Now, I've got a rather smart nutmeg grater here that you can see that's looking quite good at the moment, but I haven't had it long enough to test it, so I don't know whether it's going to be good for a long time. But this kind of nutmeg grater, The normal one that you buy, where you put the nut in the top and just grate it, always works. So you can have your choice on that. Then you put some salt on the cauliflower and enough water to come about 1.5 inches into the pan. The water should be boiling when it goes in from the kettle. And then you steam the cauliflower for about 12 minutes until it's really tender. And we've got some cauliflower here that has been steamed. So I'm going to take the lid off. The way to tell if it's cooked is to just take a skewer, very important bit of equipment, a skewer, and just test that the cauliflower is cooked. It mustn't be too soggy, but also it's got to be cooked. So when you put your skewer in, it's got to have quite a bit of give, but don't, whatever you do, overcook it. Now we'll take that out, and it's got a little handle here, which makes it easy to remove. And the cauliflower is going to go into the baking dish here. I've got a baking dish. And then, when all the cauliflower is in the gratin dish, put your cloth over it to collect the steam. And now we're going to make a really nice, quick, fast cauliflower cheese sauce. And what I did was, when I drained the cauliflower, I've reserved some of the cooking liquid. You can see there's a lot of the colour of that. You can see that it's got a lot of flavour in it. So that's the cauliflower, 3 ounces, 3 fluid ounces of the cauliflower cooking liquid, which is going to go into my pan here. And then I've got 2 tablespoons of half-fat creme fraiche, and that's going to go in next. Turn my heat up and go in with a whisk, and just bring that up to simmering point. As soon as it gets to simmering point, let it bubble and reduce until it sort of slightly thickens. And that'll take a couple of minutes. It's amazing how much flavour of the cauliflower is in that little bit of stock there, because the smell of the cauliflower and the bay leaf and the nutmeg is very enticing. Now I'm going to add the cheese, and I've got 1.5 ounces of Gruyere cheese. That's going to go in next. And I've got 1.5 ounces of Parmesan cheese. And I'm just going to stir that a little bit and add some pepper and salt. You'll probably need to do a bit of tasting here to make sure you've got enough. And then turn the heat out. The cheese doesn't need to really cook, it just needs to be combined with the rest of the sauce. Now we're going to pour it over the cauliflower. And the nice thing about the sauce is there's no flour in it. It's just this wonderful ingredient, half-fat creme fraiche, which cuts out a lot of time and a lot of work. Then finally, I'm going to put some spring onions. I've got 2 spring onions finely chopped here, and I use the green part of the spring onion as well. And that's going to go over the top of the cauliflower. Then a little bit more cheese, 1 tablespoon of Parmesan cheese on the top, and this is the best Parmesan, Parmigiano Reggiano, best quality, freshly grated, and then just a little pinch of cayenne pepper on the top, like that, to give a bit of a kick. And then before you start the recipe, you preheat the grill to its highest setting, and then that just gets whacked under the hot grill. So if you've got the grill preheated, it should take about 3 minutes at the most to be nice and golden and crusty on the top and the sauce bubbling all around the edge. Now I think that's a lovely supper dish for 2 people. I like to serve it with brown rice, but I think it also would be quite good with some penne pasta.
Here, as promised, a delightfully different way to serve courgettes, either as a salad or as a first course. First you cut the ends of a pound of courgettes, then slice them in half lengthways. Put them in a steamer, pour some boiling water over them from the kettle, then sprinkle with salt and steam for about 12 minutes depending on their size. While they're still warm, arrange them in a dish and cover them with a herb-flavoured vinaigrette marinade and leave them to chill for several hours, turning them once or twice. This is a recipe you can make well ahead. In fact, it's still good 3 days later.
I've always believed that food, all by itself, is art. And what about these three? Three works of art before me now. Well, what are they? They are cabbages. And they are a much maligned vegetable. In fact, a lot of people grow up thinking they don't like cabbage because they've not ever had it prepared and cooked properly. So today we're going to look at this beautiful, much maligned vegetable and see how to deal with it. And while we're doing that, campaign as well, another campaign's going here, is please, chefs and restaurants and catering trade, can we have more of this? You know, we never see it, it never appears. All we have are those funny little green beans and mange tout and boring old vegetables. And all the time, all this is ignored. So, I've got three types of cabbage. There are many, many more. But this one is a favourite. It's got good flavour. This is Savoy cabbage with those lovely crinkly leaves. This is called pointed cabbage. And this is a green cabbage, not very green, but sort of midway. And then we've got the very green spring greens. And the same as when we looked at the cauliflower, the way to tell good cabbage is to listen for that lovely squeak. If the leaves are squeaky like that, then it's really ready. You want it as fresh as possible, as squeaky as possible. Now I want to show you how to prepare a cabbage. Now with these cabbages here, this one and the spring greens, the best thing to do is to lay the leaves out like that and then to just cut down the stalk